You're listening to the Behind the Tee podcast, hosted by your favorite club curlers, Rob and Kelly. The show where we share our thoughts on what's happening in the curling world with the internet. But let's be real, we end up talking about football half the time anyways. Welcome back to the Behind the Tee podcast. How's it going, Rob?
It's going okay. How are you, Kelly?
Not too bad. Another week has gone by and we still do not have a mixed doubles team for the Olympics.
What the hell? When are we going to know?
What is taking so long?
I feel a bit of responsibility behind the delay here because clearly when you and I threw our names into the ring, whatever I'm trying to say here, clearly it must have caused some kind of disruption. I bet Curling Canada was ready to name their team, and then when we announced that we were ready to represent Canada, they were like, "Oh, wait, the podcasters. Well, this changes everything."
Right. I really don't know what's taking so long because the Olympics start in less than a month.
Exactly. And if you listened to us a few weeks ago, we were saying that we ran through the list of teams. And okay, quick aside, I do get it. It's a very difficult decision for Curling Canada, obviously, but I wouldn't say it's a long decision.
No.
Because we ran through the list of teams. We had a lot of comments about each team, most of them positive, and we came to a conclusion that we both agreed on, that it would make a lot of sense to nominate Rachel Homan and John Morris. Of course, there's many other teams that we're leaving out.
Let's be real. There's 2 or 3 teams to pick from. The short list.
I would say there's a lot, but...
let me rephrase. Everyone who was going to play in the trials, very good teams. But in terms of the criteria, I think that they were kind of looking at, there's really 2 to 3 teams that I think they're really seriously looking at.
I suppose we were being very generous. So my short list was kind of a long list, let's say that. Yeah. But the conclusion that we came down to in the end was that you really can't go wrong with Rachel Homan and John Morris, right? Mm-hmm. They meet every criteria that you're looking for. If this is a job interview, I can't really see how you go with anybody else.
And I think I can't see them not favoring having prior Olympic experience as being a huge asset, which they both have.
Right.
And John Morris in mixed doubles because he's won a gold. So I think the choice is pretty obvious.
And we know that Curling Canada values notoriety and previous experience, right?
Exactly. So
at least that's the trend that they've set.
I am so shocked why they haven't announced it yet. And it kind of sucks too for if I were a player up for contention for this spot. If you were chosen to go to the Olympics, you would be preparing to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And now you're in limbo. So you're like, hey, I'm going to prepare myself and train and mentally prepare to go to the Olympics when I don't even know if I'm going to be going. That's really got to be weird, for the players just to be in this limbo.
It's funny, Kelly, because one of the points that I really wanted to bring up a month ago and I kept forgetting to was one of the knocks on the Canadian Olympic trials is that it happens too close to the Olympics. We declare our Olympic teams in late November, early December, and then the Olympics are 2 months later. That's not a lot of time to get ready. And the elite teams they all have to plan entering this season as if they're going to be the Olympic team and just hope that they actually carry that out. Whereas other countries declare their Olympic representatives maybe a year in advance. So it's always been I kind of like it this way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's easy for me to say. I'm not an aspiring Olympian, so I kind of like having this big Olympic trials thing before Christmas. But all this to say, well, what about the trials? The trials happen for mixed doubles, that is, after Christmas. So I think declaring your mixed doubles representative 2 weeks ago was incredibly late. Well, here we are, 3 weeks from the Olympics, and we still don't know? We're running out of quarantine time.
This kind of shines a light on how much Curling Canada values mixed doubles. It's kind of like an afterthought almost. We'll get around to picking our mixed doubles team.
Well, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I don't know if it's that,
right.
But I think that
it's the vibe that they're definitely projecting, at least.
I think what it is they just underestimated what a big deal this is for every stakeholder involved, mm-hmm. from all the teams that are registered for the mixed doubles trials to Team Holly Duncan, which we'll get into later. It's really caused a lot of commotion here, the delay in naming a team.
Right.
And how can you plan? That's really what it comes down to.
And as someone who loves to plan and does not like to wait to the last minute for big life.
Kelly is obviously talking about herself here, not me.
Yeah, when it comes to big life decisions and moments and things that are very, have a significant importance in my life, I plan the shit out of it ahead of time.
You're wrong.
Yeah, this is very different.
This is why one day I'm going to work for Curling Canada.
And this is why I'm a project manager. But I think this is a great segue to go into, speaking of Rachel Homan, she has officially, or her team has officially been selected by Curling Ontario as the Ontario representative for the Scotties on the condition that she doesn't go to the Olympics.
I know, that was quite an interesting news story that dropped this week. There was a lot going on because, as you know, there are very few provincials occurring. The Western provinces, for whatever reason, are going ahead with their provincials. Ontario declared Rachel Homan as their representative with that caveat. But I have to say that was interesting because if you're just a very casual curling fan, when you think of Ontario, you think of Rachel Homan as the obvious choice. But if you dig deep and follow the way things have gone this year, is Rachel the number one team in Ontario? Should she have been selected? It's a much tougher question to answer.
If their provincials actually went ahead, I wouldn't be surprised.
Would she have won?
Yeah, that's a huge question.
I know, you got to keep in mind she got the last spot. She barely made it there. So I understand what the Ontario Curling Association, or I love their name, by the way, Curl On.
Curl On.
Just means like,
yeah,
keep calm and curl on. I don't know.
Oh, all the marketing material you can make, the merch.
Hey, Ontario, I just, if you come up with that as a slogan, remember, you heard it here first. But like, I understand why they selected Homan. I mean, they got to have the federation well represented. And honestly, if your life depended on Ontario doing well, you would have to go with Rachel Homan. But it was an awkward selection because they said Homan on the condition that she's not named to the Olympic team. If she is named the mixed doubles representatives, then it'll go to Team Holly Duncan, who is a very deserving representative as well out of Ontario, who I believe is like neck and neck with Homan in terms of points. Mm-hmm. But it's a pretty awkward position to put everybody in from Team Duncan, who are, I believe, have never made the Tournament of Hearts. I could be wrong. Imagine the nerves that they must be feeling. Like, are we going to the Tournament of Hearts? Are we not? And it's also an awkward spot for Team Homan because think of Emma and Joanne and Sarah. Like, are they going or are they not? It's 3 weeks away and we don't know.
Well, the Scotties is the week before the Olympics. Like, it's in 10 days.
Right.
Like, I would be freaking out if I were part of Holly Duncan's team. I'd be like, am I going? Am I not? Do I have to take time off work? Do I not? Do I have to quarantine? Do I not?
I know. I feel really bad for them. And in fact, I kind of when I heard that, I really hope they pick Homan and Morris because like to get a team like that, to get their hopes up and then be like, oh, wait, no, they've not picked Rachel. So Rachel's going, not you. I don't know. I mean, it's nobody's fault. We shouldn't have to be in this position. It sucks. But at the same time,
what if Ontario went with like, oh, we'll just because we don't know the status of Rachel Homan, we'll just go with Holly Duncan. And it's like, that is also kind of shitty as well because you're, as part of Team Duncan, obviously you'd be happy to go. But it's like, oh, I just got my spot because maybe Rachel Homan would be going to the Olympics. And then Rachel's team is also like, oh, we're not going just because Rachel may be going to like, it's just a really shitty situation all around.
Exactly. And a couple of elite curlers pointed out what a lousy situation this is by mentioning that, at the last Olympic trials, Jennifer Jones did not have Caitlin Laws, but she was allowed to participate. Now, mind you, there was no global pandemic back in the last Olympics, but a lot of the elite curlers have been tweeting about the Ontario Curling Federation's announcement and dissing it. And I get it. However, I don't really, even though this is a very awkward announcement that puts puts two teams into a very weird situation, I don't really blame Curling Ontario or Curl On or whatever they're called. I blame Curling Canada for
delaying.
Yes, like what's the holdup? I know it's a tough decision, but like we said earlier, it's not a long decision.
No.
The choice is clear. It's you and me.
Yeah. Come on, Curl Canada. I gotta get my bags packed. I'm ready to go.
I've been quarantining all week. I'm good to go.
Oh dear. Well, you know what? Hopefully next episode we'll actually have an announcement to make, because this is ridiculous.
Yes, because I don't remember where I read this, but I believe they're waiting to see how the provincial finals turn out, which have just wrapped up actually 30 seconds ago. There's a couple of provincials that have gone ahead. Now they've all been decided. So the field is pretty much getting set.
You mentioned the provincial finals here. So, for example, Laura Walker, her team has just won the Alberta provincial finals. So
That's
she will be going to the Scotties, which automatically eliminates her. And she was playing with Kirk Myers, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so they're they're automatically out of the run now, I think. But again, this is so messed up, because also if I were Laura Walker, I would forego this year's Scotties to go to the Olympics.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know, of course. Hey, Kate Cameron, you're skipping.
Yeah, so then if Curling Canada was like, we're not going to pick you because you're already going to the Scotties, I would be really upset if I were Walker.
I know. Yeah, that's weird. And we brought this up earlier before our mics came on about we feel that Curling Canada loves notoriety at their events.
Mm-hmm.
And would they opt for a different team just to give the Tournament of Hearts more of a well-known name in having Rachel there? Like, would we say maybe let's bend the rules and have Jocelyn Peterman and Brett Gallant go, just so that we can have Rachel play the Tournament of Hearts? It's an interesting question. I don't agree with that at all.
That's like something that will never be announced, but is like could be lingering in the back end there. Like we all know, but no one's gonna say it. No, I don't think so.
This is the byproduct of waiting so long, coupled with the pandemic, is that you and I are gonna speculate.
I think, honestly, and this is not going to happen because we announced it, but I really think it's going to be Morris and Holman, and I just don't understand what the delay is.
I think so too, ultimately. Although John Morris, by the way, just 2 minutes ago won Alberta to go to the Brier. I mean, not a surprise. So does that play in? I think the Brier does not overlap with the Olympics.
No, it's after. Okay. So he can totally play, no problem.
Okay, so it's only the women that are affected. Wow, that's not sexist at all.
At all.
So really, I think I don't know. Personally, I'd still be like, just send Homan and Morris.
That's their team name.
Morin.
You know when you like ship couples together, that's their ship name.
I know, yeah. Morin, I like it. Morin, that should catch on.
Team Morin.
You should send them and let Holly Duncan have her Tournament of Hearts. Because again, I blame Curling Canada for waiting this long.
Yeah, same here. So on that note, let's continue on with the other two provinces who have already solidified their representatives.
I have to say, we just very quickly, we questioned whether these provincials should take place or not last week. I'm really glad that they did. Let's just say I spent this week socially isolating myself. So to have actual curling on, I know you make fun of me all the time for watching these other provinces, but it helped kill some time, I have to say. BC, what a story.
Wow. So do you want to announce who the winner is?
I will, yes. So BC, I do feel bad. There was this team, I have to be honest, I had not heard of, named the skip Kayla McMillan. Ran through the BC field undefeated, made the final, was in really good position to win the game, was winning after 8, and could not close it out, very sadly for her. So unfortunately for her, she lost. So Marianne Arsenault, though.
Woo! Not just Marianne Arsenault, but
the rest of Kelly Scott's team.
Yes.
Gina Schrader, Sasha Carter, Renee Simon, like the vintage Kelly Scott team.
Yeah, we haven't seen them in, I don't want to say decade, but it's been a long time.
But maybe it has been that. Yeah. We'll have to do our research after. But really bad because I just caught the end of that game and saw how it unfolded. Nobody wants to see a team lose their way. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, to see the rest of Kelly Scott's team back with Marianne Arsenault, it's going to be interesting. My only question is, how can you reunite that team and not have Kelly Scott?
Right. What is Kelly Scott up to these days?
I don't know. I really hope they bring her as a 5th player.
Oh, that would be amazing.
She really should.
Yeah.
So congratulations, though, to Marianne Arsenault, who first year playing down out of BC, she wins it. Had to fight her way through. BC did their men's provincials at the same time, by the way.
Okay.
Tyler Tardy was the number 1 seed. He did not have a good week. He got eliminated pretty quickly. Jim Cotter got eliminated in the 3-4 game. The final was between Paul Cheka, as Kelly is going, who is that? And Jeff Richard.
I've never heard of either team.
Okay. Jeff Richard is the brother of Gina Schrader.
Oh, okay. But you know what? Yeah, it's weird to be like, oh, we don't know who these people are, but it's also good for the sport. It means we're going to see some new faces.
Me too. I was happy to see some turnover.
And who knows, these teams might be like the next big teams in BC, and we'll start seeing them more.
Not to be negative, maybe not with Jeff Richard, and because the average, his front end was young, but Jeff Richard, and particularly the guy throwing last rocks, Brent Pierce, is 53.
Oh, okay.
I believe. You're going to love Brent Pierce when you see him at the Briar, by the way. He's got the most awesome stabilizer. I was happy he won. I was like, oh boy, this will be good material for Kelly.
I guess his age is a factor here.
He's a Briar champion. He's not only made the Briar before, he won it. He was on the Greg McCauley winning team 22 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
I actually did my research for once. I know. So BC is a throwback. But good for them. Good to see. I guess I want to say a new team, a very old team, new team, whatever you want to call it. Alberta, Laura Walker won, and Kevin Cooey blazed through the men's side. I don't think ever probably made it past 6 ends without being up by at least 8. Like he dominated. Won Alberta with his eyes closed. It was never close. I feel bad for Ted Appelman, the guy who lost the final to him, because I don't know the whole story, but I believe Ted Appelman has been like knocking on the door in Alberta for 20 years. Like he's lost finals to Kevin Cooey, to Kevin Martin, to Botcher, to Randy Furby way back when.
He's got to move province.
I know. Come here.
Come to Quebec. It's wide open.
But I have to say, Saskatchewan was my favorite province to follow this week. First of all, what a field Saskatchewan had. Chelsea Carey, as we mentioned, Robin Silvernagle, Amber Holland, who's won, Sherry Anderson, the living legend, Russ Howard's daughter, Ashley Howard. Saskatchewan had such a deep field, and it was none of those teams that won.
But just before you announce it, it's kind of nice to see because Saskatchewan was a quite dominant province back in the day, and it kind of slumped even in the men's for a while too. Like there was which was kind of surprising too, like the teams that were coming out of there just weren't, not to sound negative either, but it wasn't like the same caliber as Manitoba and Alberta, let's say. Which
is weird because like they're not far off, but you're right. Like they're
in between the two provinces. Like
a 40+ year Briar drought.
I don't know what's going on with that wheat, but I guess they got New Holland helped them out a little bit because they're back in the game.
Yeah.
So I don't know
where
that
provinces are we going to get banned from?
So sorry, who's the winner?
So, okay, we'll try to make amends here. So, Team Penny Barker won Saskatchewan this afternoon with a very impressive victory over Chelsea Carey. By the way, just a common theme from this weekend was or maybe not just this weekend, this year, but teams going undefeated and losing the final. We think of Tracy Fleury at the Olympic trials, undefeated, lost the final. Kayla McMillan, Paul Checky, both in BC, went undefeated, lost the final.
I was going to say when you're telling that story, like, oh, they pulled the Fleury.
Yeah, and it's hard, yeah. Chelsea Carey as well went undefeated in Saskatchewan, lost the final to Penny Barker, who I have to say, like, I like Chelsea Carey, but I was really, really happy for Team Penny Barker because we don't really mention names here on the podcast very often, but we'll make an exception here. Their third, Christy Gamble. You remember Christy?
Yeah.
Yeah, friend of the podcast. Well, I don't think she knows we have a podcast, but
she will soon.
She will soon, hopefully.
No, but we both know her. She did spend some time in Quebec back in her university days, and her husband is a native Montrealer as well.
Yeah, I played on his team for a couple of years, so I know Tyler very well, and I know Christy very well. And I have to say, like, first of all, Christy is like one of the coolest people I've ever met. First of all, a heck of a curler, and she has worked so incredibly hard in curling. She's put in so much effort, way more than you and I ever have.
Yeah.
And So to see her win this afternoon, I was so happy for her. So Christy, if you're listening, congratulations. Nobody deserves this more than you. I'm sorry for all the too many men on the field jokes we've made over the years and all of that, but I was so happy to see you win. So were my parents, as I'm sure you'll know.
And we'll definitely be cheering for her and that team at the Scotties this year when they happen.
Yes, which now I've totally changed gears. I remember last week we were like, oh, maybe we should just cancel this, and now I'm like, no, let them go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can we get fans in the building? Can we like find a way to do this?
As far as we know, they're still going ahead. So
yeah, like we want something to watch, and now like the field is coming into, or we've pretty much got the field named. So
we'll do an episode recapping all the players in the next coming weeks. But the rest of this episode is dedicated to us telling our stories of like how we got into curling. So although Canada is the biggest country in curling, but within Canada, it's always like a shocker to people, or people tend to be very excited when they find out that we're curlers, and we're not just we play curling, but we're like lifelong curlers. And a common question we always get is like, how did you get into that? Because it's not like Little League or soccer or hockey that are just like common sports that kids play when they're young.
Right. Like you have to have some kind of connection to it normally, right?
Yeah. And especially back in the 90s, it was even like more obscure of a sport than it is now, because you don't have like social media, and it wasn't on TV as much and all that jazz. So, and I don't think we've like really shared or like mentioned a little bit about like our competitive careers and stuff, but we never really talked about how we got into curling.
So like you and I have known each other for what, like, okay, more than 10 years, like a long time.
Yeah.
Let's not date ourselves, but I don't know your story. So
oh, that's true. And I don't really know yours. So we'll be learning more about ourselves.
Right. It's not a great story, but I'll keep listening anyway.
So do you want to go first?
Okay, I suppose.
Go for it.
I don't really have much of a story to tell, except that I feel like most curlers I come across get into it because their parents were involved. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is my parents had nothing to do with curling. Not really anyway. My dad was... The funny thing with my dad, I'm pretty sure I've told you this, is he was a huge curling fan, but he never threw a rock in his life.
Which is really shocking. Yeah. Like it's common to see, like you have football fans who've never thrown a football or something, or played football. But yeah, it's not common to see just curling fans.
That's it. Like it's an acquired taste, I suppose. But like my dad was a big time. He would watch the Brier. He would watch the Tournament of Hearts, or before the Tournament of Hearts, whatever, the Women's National Championship, whatever it was called. He told me that he went to see the World Championships when they were held in Pointe Claire, of all places. For all our non-Montreal listeners, Pointe Claire is a suburb of Montreal.
Google it, yeah.
Yeah, they hosted the World Championships back in the 70s or something.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah, it's true. My dad went. But he was not a curler. He had never thrown a rock, and so eventually, like I'm skipping many years ahead here. Eventually, we were like, "Hey, you've got to come curling," and he was very adamant. No, I have no interest in playing. I just like watching. How did you?
Because your brothers also curl as well. So how did you guys?
Yeah. So what it comes down to is my grandparents were curlers. So not on my dad's side, though. Like my dad was the only person in his family who had anything to do with curling. But on my mom's side, my grandfather in particular, when he retired, this is probably around the early 80s. You know, when you retire, you're looking for projects, I guess. He lived in the West Island, very close to this curling club. Because I was just talking about Pointe Claire. You know, we normally don't mention clubs, so let's mention Pointe Claire here. It'll come up in your story too, probably. So he lived pretty close to a curling club in this Pointe Claire area, and so he joined it, and he never looked back. He got really, really into it and played up until into his 90s.
Yeah, which is also not just sorry to jump in here, but it's also not uncommon for older gentlemen to play well into their late years at curling clubs.
No, not at all. Yeah, I'm gonna boast his CV for a moment here. He got an 8-ender when he was like 88 or something like that.
Look at that! I'm still working on mine.
I know, and it was back in the day where you you got your name thrown in the hat to potentially win a car.
Whoa.
You could win a car if you got an 8. They don't do that anymore.
No, what do you get now? Like a certificate?
You get a certificate.
Wow, you've really gone downhill.
And you get a pin.
Okay.
I got an 8-ender right before the shutdown in 2020. It was, but no car, I dare say. But yeah, my grandfather played for a while. I did my research, Kelly. I asked my parents about this, or my mom, what do you know about how my grandfather got into curling and such and such? And sadly, he died a few years ago, so I can't ask him the questions myself. But I believe I kind of liked this story. My grandfather's from New Brunswick, so he went back to New Brunswick for a reunion because he went to the University of New Brunswick. He went to this reunion right after he had started curling, and he was just so excited. He told everybody, "I've discovered the world's greatest sport. You have to try it. It's so much fun."
Right.
And one of the people that he told this to was somebody, an old friend of his, whose name is Burgess.
Right.
Okay, and the point is that I don't know if you've heard of the Burgess curling family out of the Maritimes. They've
I have
tons of briars, tons of tournament, and this guy's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm glad you discovered it. I just came back from the Briar," or something like that. And to this day, actually, I think so. This guy, it must be his great granddaughter. I'm just totally speculating, but Carly Burgess, who we'll see at the Tournament of Hearts, is from this family. So, anyway, so all this to say, my grandparents were very much into curling. My grandfather, in particular, he got my grandmother to play as well. I really liked her stories because she never paid attention to the score.
Right.
People would ask her "Oh, how did your game go?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't remember, but I had a lot of fun." So I don't know. I've always kind of liked that. Anyways, so man, I'm blabbing on here. Sorry.
Yeah, when you said you had nothing to say.
When you don't have much material, you stretch it. That's what I'm doing. Okay, but just to make a long story short here, one of the things that my family would do is at this curling club, they would have kind of a family day every Christmas, or Boxing Day, actually, like the day after Christmas. And so what we would do is my grandparents would take my parents and me and my brothers and a couple of other friends, and we'd all go and try curling. And we did this when I was a baby, when I was 1 or 2, and I never had any idea what was going on.
Right, because you're a kid.
Yeah, and Kelly would argue I still have no idea what's going on. But I mean, I don't know, 6-year-old me was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool. This is a very weird building. There's ice. I can run and slide. And then we get hot chocolate and hot dogs and chips after."
A good time.
Yeah. And so we did this every Boxing Day. It was part of my family's Christmas tradition. And then one year, the guy that ran the junior program was there, and he was like, "Oh, hey, you should come out and try our junior program." And I didn't really want to, but my parents were like, "Oh, get this guy out of the house, for God's sake."
Yeah, you need an activity.
I guess the rest is history. I tried it out. I didn't like it the first couple of weeks, but my parents sent me back, and after a while, I got into it, and going to the curling club on weekends became a lot of fun. And eventually I got a little bit more competitive and became good friends with some of the other people at this club. We formed a little competitive team. We had our run, and pretty much end of story.
I'll jump into my story because ours will eventually meet at some point. But yeah, kind of, you said you just start playing those weekend junior, and it just becomes a ritual. It's what you do. It's part of life. So to go into my story, a lot of people our age, I kind of came from a curling family. My dad was really into curling, except he actually played.
Yeah, see, I knew that.
So, and he comes from the Wheat Sheaf province, where everyone curled. Every little town had a curling club, or a sheet at least. So he really got into it there. And then he moved to Montreal at some point in his life, and then met my mom, and then I came into the world. So I actually don't even remember the first time I went into a curling club, because I was barely conscious and a tiny little baby.
This is the fun part. I wanted to say this before because I am like a couple of years older than you. So I can be like, I've been curling since before you were born. Because we probably both have pictures of us as babies in a curling club.
Yeah. So like when I say I grew up in a curling club, like I literally grew up in a curling club. So my parents were part of, they played in a curling club here in Montreal, and they were part of a league, different leagues. They didn't play on the same team. So one person was on the ice, the other one came with the baby, did the swap, and that was how it was done back then. So that was my first exposure to curling. And obviously, like, it was always on the TV. Like, we always watched the Brier and the Scotties and stuff. And I always watched, not really knowing what was going on. But then I came of age where I was about the same weight as a curling stone. And that's the time where they're like, child, you must now start curling. I actually started curling at a curling club in Ontario in a suburb of Toronto.
Right, because you lived there for a bit, right?
Yeah, I did live there for a bit. So I'll name drop the club, but it was a North Halton Curling Club. It was like a golf and curling club in a suburb of Toronto.
Everybody in North Halton, Ontario just cheered.
Kind of the same thing. Like every club has their little junior league that are usually Sunday mornings. And you get a little like instructional, and then you play a little bit of curling. And I remember my first time. I remember this story vividly, even though it happened when I was like 10 years old. It was the first session of the year, and my dad was responsible for bringing me to the session. And we were late because that's just how things are. And the first session, like everyone was in the room, and I guess they kind of gave instructions and stuff like that, and like the introduction, and then everyone went on the ice. But by the time I got there, everyone was already on the ice, and I had no idea what to do. And this is also, I didn't have any shoes or anything. And I don't know if you did this when you started curling, but you'd take your tennis shoe and then you put like this transparent duct tape on it.
Oh, we used electrical tape.
Oh, okay. No, ours was or the one they had at the club was transparent. So before going on the ice, you had to like tape up your shoe. And like it barely slid, but it was good enough. And so yeah, like I just went on the ice and told you how to slide and everything. And at the time, because I was so small, I was using the little rocks, and even the little rocks I couldn't get down the ice. Like we played a half sheet. I don't know if you've seen that before.
Yeah.
But basically they like what they had was a hack on a plank of wood, and they like somehow put it halfway down the sheet, and that's how we played like one way. And I could barely get the rock down there, but with time I aged and got a little stronger. And so I think I only played at that club for 1 year, I think, or like a year and a half, because then we moved back to Quebec in Montreal, and we joined our local curling club there. And that's when I upgraded to big rocks. In Montreal, there's like a league between the clubs, and we probably crossed paths at this point too.
We did not know each other. We for sure played each other.
But all of like the junior leagues, there was like an intramural kind of thing. So a couple times a year, everyone would get together at one club and you'd play a game. And then there was also like this, there was this bonspiel at one of the clubs that happened between Christmas and New Year's. That was very common for like all the local kids to play in. So again, we probably crossed paths there. And then, yeah, kind of like you, there's a couple, like 4 girls at our curling club. And then someone's dad was like, hey, girls, would you be interested in doing a little more competing than just this tournament and like the intramural? So that was like my introduction to competitive curling. And we played down in the Jeux de Quebec. I don't know if you ever played that tournament.
I did. We tried out. We never came close to making it.
Oh, really?
The Jeux de Quebec continues to elude me. And now it's too late.
Yeah, so the Jeux de Quebec is it was 15 and under.
Oh, it's way too late.
Yeah, way too late now. But we were lucky that because we were like we were not living on the island of Montreal, we were in a different region. So we had to play one team from like the Eastern Townships.
Oh, see, there you go. We had to play like tons of teams.
You had to play the Montreal teams. But Montreal was definitely a lot more competitive than it is now. There were quite a few junior teams at the time. And then after Jeux de Quebec, the next level up was the Canada Games playdown, which I think you definitely played down in that one too, right?
I did. I don't think I think I played in because the Canada Games happens every 4 years.
Right.
I think I played in the cycle before you would have
me.
played in it. I think because I think I was a little bit too old for it. I just missed out on the second one.
Okay.
When I tried it, it was not pretty. We had fun. We traveled every corner of the province. It was our first time ever really competing. It took us till March to win a game. I remember that. We went 0-4 at every single tournament we played.
Oh my goodness. For Canada Games, I was playing on a new team, left the old team, went on to a new team. And that final tournament was in Baie-Comeau. It was my one of my first like
Oh my
travel
God.
experiences. Yeah, all the way to Baie-Comeau. And if you're a listener, you don't know where that is, Google it. It is far north.
But if you don't want to Google it, get in your car, drive 8 hours north, find a place to sleep, and then drive another 7 hours the next day.
Yeah. Hey, but that wasn't the last time I was going to visit Baie-Comeau, though. That's for sure. After that year where we did not win a spot to the Canada Games, I joined a different team, or actually didn't even join the team. I formed a new team and played with those girls for quite a couple of years. That's when I joined the same club that you were at.
That's right. I was trying to identify, like, I knew who you were before that, but like I didn't really know you.
Right.
But like this is when you joined the same club as me, and
like this would have been 2006-ish, 2007.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I do remember that, and I remember like our two teams convoyed up to this treacherous highway all the way up to Baie-Comeau to go to the provincials, and that was not fun at all. But anyways, all that aside, I remember that well, like the 2-day trip there. And like we didn't know your team very well yet. I think I seem to remember my team was bickering with your team the whole way up there.
It's junior curling. There's so much drama. Good thing social media did not exist when we were teenagers.
Oh my God.
Because I think it's good that some things just were left in the 2000s and we don't have a record of it, because I bet you if you revisit it, it's really cringe.
Oh, absolutely.
Really cringe. While I was going through my curling history here before this episode, I kind of tallied up all of the curling clubs I've played. I like played at as a member, and it's a lot.
Oh, as a member? Yeah. How many?
I'm at 8.
8?
Yeah. And some of them, because like in my competitive career, I did jump around clubs quite a bit.
But even still, like so did I, and like I can name 4, and I felt like that was a lot.
Oh wow! Oh no, I'm just
maybe I have more than 4.
Collecting. I'm the Chelsea Carey of curling clubbers. Just collecting them all the membership. But yeah, so that's kind of my story, and now I'm settled on one club.
At some point, we came across the same curling club, I guess, like around that time that we did that stupid trip to Baie-Comeau.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's because I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, wait a minute, I don't even know when we started curling together or when we became friends or anything like that. But okay, around then.
Yeah, it was around then, but we definitely crossed paths beforehand, just through like the competitive circuit, and because it was always the same people at every tournament, right? So you can do the math with the dates I gave you. And that will, you can figure out how old we are, of how long we've known each other.
People can probably figure out the time of day we were born, like, and then the date, like if they're avid listeners.
These stories are kind of interesting now just because of how more popular curling has become over the years. Because I remember when I first started curling, like I was kind of embarrassed to tell people that I played, because when I told people, at school, kids were stupid and they're like, "Oh my God, like that's an old person sport," and like that. Not necessarily something to, it was something to be proud of, but as a shy, awkward kid, like you were not bragging that you were a curler.
You're preaching to the choir. I'm glad you brought that up. It took me until like my 3rd year of high school before I finally admitted to kids, like, yeah, I can't. I have something to do on the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, what? And I would be like, maybe I should say hockey, but they would take one look at me and go like, that's BS. You're not a hockey player.
Right.
But yeah, I was way too ashamed to admit it, like, because I think I did once early on and somebody laughed, and I don't know.
Yeah, same. I've experienced that as well. But now you tell people that you curl and they're like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. I want to try curling. How can I try curling? Can you take me out curling?" Like all those questions. How did you get into it? So it's definitely a different era.
Exactly. And I find it interesting that like I guess both our stories are a little bit different. Like for you it's your parents, for me it's it skipped a generation in my family. But what I kind of want to see more of is people join who don't have a family connection. Just like kids sign up at being like, hey, this looks fun, let's try it.
Right. We definitely see more adults now just joining the club. And, it's definitely, it's a great physical activity and it's a great social activity because you're not just playing the sport, like you're actually joining a club and you get to know the people. So, yeah, but now it's just to get more children in it who kind of bring their parents in and then the parents get involved as opposed to the
Yeah.
other way around.
That's it. One like little inspiring word I can offer here. I think I've brought this up before, but like I work in a school. I'm a teacher. So when I'm not podcasting, and we have a little curling program at our school. And we have a little inter high school curling league, and it's really not the most competitive thing at all. Like we don't even bother to teach the free guard zone rule just to like put it into context. But what's really nice is that this year with COVID, well, unfortunately, we're probably going to have to cancel the rest of the year, but we didn't really advertise it very well because we weren't sure how many kids we would be allowed or whatnot. But like tons of people sign up.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find kind of nice is that I remember myself being 12 and 13, being way too ashamed to even tell my best friend that I was a curler. And now I'm like, oh, look, there's 30, 12, 13-year-old kids that want to come try curling. They don't want to necessarily stick with it, which is something I kind of want to change. I would love it if they one day down the road, I'm not talking about becoming competitive like the two of us did, but if they ever decided like, hey, that sport I tried back in high school, I think I'm going to take it up. It'll be a fun way to kill time. I don't know.
Like keep it as a hobby.
Exactly. Like it'd be nice if we could translate it into maybe a bit more of a commitment to the sport.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a nice thought because back when, like, I think you were saying too, like when we were in high school,
No, it was not cool.
we would have been alone.
Yeah, it was not cool to be a curler in high school.
But now it is.
But now it is. Yeah, so that kind of wraps up this week's episode. We were kind of thinking of making this a part 2. We kind of told our story, but like not everyone comes from a curling family, and some people just join later in life. So we're thinking next week, do an episode all about how you can get into the sport and like things to know for your first time going on the ice and what to expect when you're joining a club for the first time. So catch us next week. Bye.
See you then.